Bonsoir, good evening, mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the live Zoom Q&A for Ruth Platt's Martyrs Lane. I'm Mitch Davis, Artistic Director of the Fantasia International Film Festival, and it is my pleasure to welcome you here tonight. A British ghost story of a different kind and a personal horror vision to be cherished, Martyrs Lane is a heartbreaking fairy tale that speaks its truth in tears and blood. If you're barely able to speak after having just seen it, the magic of Zoom will rescue you tonight as you can type your questions into the Q&A field and we'll get to them over the course of our discussion. And now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming to the virtual Fantasia stage, writer-director Ruth Platt. Hello. Oh, hey. You're muted. There we go.
Am I unmuted? Sorry, I thought I had it all set up. Hi, Mitch. Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. It's great to see you, even if virtually. It's 1:30 in the morning in the UK.
I'm so sorry about that.
No, it's good. It's good.
And I realized as we were scheduling this how difficult or nigh impossible it would be for you to be able to bring on most of your cast, given the timelines and everything else. But
and it's holidays and bad Wi-Fi
and that.
Yeah, travel.
But I'm thrilled that you're able to join us tonight.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. Fantastic. I've been so excited about the film showing at Fantasia and all the kind of social media buzz around it. It's been really exciting. And
it's been so good to see people talking about it like this.
Yeah.
Thanks for trusting us with the film's world premiere. It means a lot to us.
Yeah, it means a lot to me too. You know, I just love the festival and it's just got such a lovely feel to it, the whole thing. I just wish I was there.
Me too. So where to begin with a film this profound and this personal? I mean, I suppose we should begin with its inception. So if you want to speak to where Martyrs Lane came from.
Sure. Yeah, it came from a variety of places. But I guess it's not an autobiographical story, but the seed is autobiographical, I guess, the setting, that world. I was a child in a big old church-owned vicarage. My parents were older parents, my siblings were older, and I was alone in that house quite a lot of the time, overhearing adult conversations, trying to piece together what was going on. Quite adult stuff going on, you know, people in need, strangers knocking on the door, tales of supernatural going on, and stuff like that.
Were you hearing confessions as well?
I never heard confessions. No. You never hear confessions. They happen somewhere else, and you know that priests never give away anything like that. But you know, the house was an open house, so that the people would come that would need help, and there were always, you know, late night knocking on the door, tales. You'd hear things about exorcisms or hauntings and things like that. And as a child, you know, even like snatches and snippets. And I had violent nightmares, of visceral nightmares. So it was just my childhood imagination, I guess, that was part of the story of the film. But the rest of the film, I think, you know, is very influenced by Gothic literature, the British tradition of Gothic literature, ghost stories, the ghost story cinematic tradition, the Spanish ghost story cinematic tradition.
Sure. There's the Spirit of the Beehive is very prominent.
Spirit of the Beehive is, yeah, really sort of a seminal film for me. I just love that film, and those children's performances in the film, you know, Anna Torrent, and those really kind of spontaneous, very naturalistic performances, even though it's set within quite a magical realist sort of you know, setting, and the way she's filtering the adult world and what she sees of the adult world through her own childhood imagination, which is a quite dark imagination. So yeah, that's a very influential film for me. So there were lots of things that filtered through the sound of my brain, I guess, to create the world of Martyrs Lane.
Fantastic. And you were speaking of a child's perception. One of the really beautiful charms of the film is the way it's constructed to be seen or to be experienced through the eyes of Leah, with little bits of information of her world and her place in that world becoming clear to the audience as she learns about new things and picks up new items and explores objects. Do you want to speak to that approach a little?
Yeah, it was trying to build that world of being a child in an adult's world, and what tools are available to you when you're not being communicated to on a level, on an equal footing. And being in this space, this house, which I kind of tried to create almost as another character. I kind of saw the house as a bit of a metaphor for the mother's brain, where the downstairs was kind of like her daytime waking conscious brain, where there were lots of things going on, and
her public brain,
normal activity, public brain, public face. And then the upstairs was sort of like the nightmare dream state, subconscious state, where things creep in that you don't want them to creep in. And into that space we have our little girl Leah, who's rattling around almost as invisible as the little ghost that rattles around.
Yeah.
And she has
Speaking of which, I was hearing like a door slam in the background.
Oh, really?
Oh, was that not on your side? I thought that wasn't from here. What? Did you not hear that?
No.
What am I even? Okay, that was you. Okay, I don't know what I just heard like a loud bang as you were speaking. I was like, what? Oh, sorry, continue.
Ghosts on Zoom. Yeah, no, there's no door slams here, Mitch. So yeah, it was these little things, that little talisman sort of totem-like objects that mean so much, and also they defy mortality, because mortality is a big issue, big thing in the film and for humanity, and these little objects that defy mortality, that last and you can hold on to and symbolize so much. And
I mean, the objects almost contain a residual energy in the film.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely a residual emotional energy. And and they she clings on to them almost because there are no words or tools to piece together this family trauma and this family secret. So they're very important to her, and she's like a little sort of magpie, gathering these things, but even though she's not quite sure of the significance of them as she's doing it, she knows there's something. She has that sort of intuitive sense that they mean something, and then as they build, hopefully it's a jigsaw that she puts together.
And that speaks very honestly to childhood experience in and of itself. I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, all kinds of random objects would just become fascinating, and I would take them and put them in places and go back and look at them. And I feel like many of us did that.
Yes, me too.
And it's just, I love the way that plays out in the film, and the way it intertwines with religion is very, very interesting. I mean, do you want to speak to a little bit to how religion plays through the film?
Yeah. So, I think Leah is quite a faithful little child. She has this little altar with her
the older sister,
Madonna statues. Yeah.
Oh yes. Sorry.
Yeah. The little girl, she has this little altar, cardboard box altar with her Madonna statues, because my dad was Anglican, and for a little while I went to a convent school, a Catholic convent school, where the nuns all told us we were terrible heathens because Henry VIII had just like created the Anglican Church for to get married, which is a fair enough. I'm not that bothered, but at the time it was a big thing. I thought, oh my God. So I got heavily into Roman Catholic kind of idolatry and these luminous Virgin Marys, and I had a little altar. So religion she's a very sort of faithful child. She really has a sort of faith herself. Whether she's just absorbed that from her own upbringing is secondary, but she definitely believes it. And I guess that gives her a vulnerability, because it opens her to this possibility of helping this little stranger, this little unknown quantity that knocks on her window. And of course she doesn't go and speak to her parents about it. She tries to be of help, because she's mimicking what she's seen in her life with the adults.
And also, I mean, her parents don't really give her the agency or credibility to have these kinds of discussions with. It would make more sense for her on her own to just try to work it out with somebody that she sees as potentially her equal.
Exactly. It's been communicated to her non-verbally that you don't speak about stuff. And there's this sort of very practical mission going on where the house is open.
Oh, your microphone.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
There we go.
There's this very practical mission where the house is open to people in need, and it's very busy, and everyone's very outward focused on that. And of course, that's a convenient way of not looking inside
inwards. Yes.
Issues. And so she's picked up on that again, without just subliminally, without it being spoken about. And so religion is a sort of, it plays out that she realizes, I suppose it's slightly coming of age, because she realizes that it doesn't have all the answers, and there are still some very difficult truths that, you know, religion and God and prayer can't escape.
Absolutely.
Help you escape from. Yeah.
I love a little bit towards the beginning when the older sister recognizes the most vulnerable or hurtful thing she can say to her, not even to talk about the mother's distant relationship, but to imply that God might not love her. That exchange is so fantastic. And I love Leah's response of something along the lines of, I feel so sorry for you being so hateful.
Yeah, exactly.
To hear a young child say that line with such conviction.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so powerful. It's so fantastic.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I love that relationship between them, because they it feels very naturalistic and real to me. And I love that those two actresses had that chemistry. And I think it's so important to realize that in these kind of places like convents or vicarages or in different cultures as well, those kind of high moral ground places, people are human, and the children who are sort of often, I guess, in my child at least, you know, you were sort of expected to be these kind of perfect creatures. Of course, there's a lot of, if you suppress stuff and if you don't really address the real needs of children in that way, that, you know, stuff comes out in kind of strange ways, I guess.
Now, working with the two child actors to get such honest performances, I mean, taking them through emotionally very, very difficult terrain, particularly in the way that the tougher emotional beats are understated with a complexity that's very uncommon with child actors, I think. I know that you come from an actor's background and you've been trained, and I imagine that you had spidey skills to a certain point to be able to, but a lot of it, I'm sure, is just pure empathy and bonding. I'm just curious to know, what was your directing approach with them?
Well, first it was the casting process. So, I mean, I know that Michael Haneke saw something like 5,000 kids for the White Ribbon. And of course, we couldn't, you know, due to budgetary constraints, couldn't quite stretch that far, but we saw as many kids as we could. And then it was just about bringing some of them in the room and seeing how it's interesting, because what I started to realize is that children, you know, when you go to school, I don't know if you remember your first day at school, but I remember being told, be brave, don't cry, don't be nervous, you know, be strong. And there's that thing that children do off as well when they go onto a camera sometimes, which is put on a performance, and of course that's not what you want. You want someone to be completely stripped of that and just feel how they're feeling. And so that's the first thing you look for. And then I'm so sorry, I thought I turned that down.
Totally happens, it's fine. It's the nature of the medium. We always expect these kinds of things.
And then it was about, you know, working with that spontaneity and that truth, and just keeping them in the moment, keeping them in the now, not pressurizing them with too much of a story arc or the adult-led material, or the adult story, but then just getting the chemistry between the two of them. And we tried some pairings, and then we found these two girls, and their chemistry was just so palpable. It was just really interesting how they worked off each other, and that's what you need, because then you're right in the moment. And they were able to do that. And on set, they were just thick as thieves and had this wonderful energy together. And
that's
so
amazingly good fortune.
Yeah, and that was very fortunate. And that really transfers onto screen, that kind of energy. So that was really interesting. And then when we got onto set, there were some scenes that we had to work line by line with, and just keep it really, try that again, think this, you know, maybe try and get this from her, what are you thinking here, and keeping that moment and keeping it light and keeping it playful. And then there were other scenes where I just sat back and let them do it, because they were just, you know, bringing something themselves that I didn't have to do anything.
And when they were riffing and flowing, I mean, were they still following the script, or at that point were they just in the moment of their characters and reacting as their characters and going a little bit broader?
They were pretty careful with the script, but I was quite happy for them to be looser and push that slightly. So I tried to push that. I mean, time is always an issue. I'd love to have done more improvisational stuff with them, you know, and it was quite scripted, but they really subconsciously just took on the characters and started to just behave very truthfully to each other in those roles. So that was really, really interesting to see.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I presume they didn't understand the depth of what their characters were discussing in place, or did they?
I was trying to be very protective of them because I, felt responsibility to having them in this story, and didn't want them to feel uncomfortable. But
Sure.
they talked about things very frankly. Obviously, we gave the parents the scripts, and the parents were able to show the scripts to them and talk it through. But nothing really fazed them, and I think if you're obviously very careful and you don't make the advance in terms of what they should know about the more difficult, mature aspects of the story, and if they do, then you just sort of accept it and go along with it. But I think more than the actual story arc, what I was trying to get out of them was just being in that moment of every scene, and every line and every thought.
Yeah.
And that took a lot of pressure away from them, I think. But they were just extraordinary girls, and they had this. They were 10, both of them were 10.
It's insane.
Yeah.
What intuition they have, both as performers.
Yeah.
They're so real.
Yes.
In these very difficult moments. I mean, it's really outstanding. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. That was really my focus, and just getting those naturalistic performances, and that was partly down to the casting and then just working with them and their own abilities, because they just have this wonderful immediacy and spontaneity, which just relaxed into it. And it was, it was playful. We kept it playful.
Yeah, I would figure it'd be the only way to go with something this dark.
Yes.
Between takes, I mean, like just to.
Yeah. And I think, kids do role plays about stuff that can be quite dark sometimes, I think,
For sure, but not sustained like this.
No.
And what's also impressive is I feel there's a certain cadence that they keep. There's a certain rhythm that they keep through all their dialogue scenes. Like even in the more emotionally fraught moments, there's still this certain rhythm and pitch that they stay in. And I don't know if that was something that came organically through them or if that was done on set a little bit. Did you play music? Did you do things between takes to keep a certain tone and rhythm going?
We did play music now and then, but we kept them moving, and we were in an unheated house in the winter.
Oh.
And we just kept them moving and energized, and games and physical kind of interplay. So, just slapping hands or playing a guessing game or whatever it was to keep that kind of energy between them awake and alive. And sometimes they were just really tired and needed to rest, And we didn't do too many night shoots, actually, so the dark evenings kind of worked in our favor. But it was cold and they were tired, and it was just keeping their energy preserved sometimes, so that when we were ready for them, they could just come on and have it. But I always tried to get them moving before we did something, because I think if you're moving and you're breathing, you can't be tense, and you can't be you're not tired in that way. So yeah, just to be breathing and moving around before we started, and really connected to the other person.
That makes sense. That's great. Denise Gauff is the mother. Did I pronounce it? Is it Gau or Gauff?
I think it's Goff.
Oh, okay. So she's just terrific.
Yeah.
And I heard that she basically just came in and turned it on and needed very little direction. Is that the case? That she just was in it?
Yes. Yes, she was. I think it was, it was I think it could have been a difficult role for some actors, but I think, she's quite fearless in that way, and she just inhabited that role. And I was quite hands off, really, because I think it was quite an intense process for her. And I think
could imagine.
So I think it was just a process of giving her the space to do that. And she's fantastic, and she's so great in that role, because it's not that you're not sympathetic to her, you understand, but she's not playing it for the pity or for the just playing that woman with that in that situation. And it's obviously we're seeing everything from Leah's point of view, so she's quite ambiguous for us, but we can still sense there's so much going on, because she's inhabiting that role. So I think it's very fascinating chemistry.
Absolutely. And she had to have been drawing on something that you wouldn't even want to discuss with her, I imagine, because it was coming from such a real place.
I wouldn't even know if I wouldn't ask her. I think her process is her process. Whatever she does, it works. It works brilliantly. and whether it's drawing on something from her life or not, you know, it's something it's very truthful and palpable. So, you know, it was fantastic to have that performance in the film.
Oh yeah, it's an absolute gift.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, one of the really beautiful things about the film, for me, is the way it addresses unresolved grief as its own sort of haunting, and unresolved trauma or undiscussed trauma. And I think anyone who's dealt with depression, or who's just had you know, heavy experiences in their past, it'll resonate so strongly with them. There's something incredibly truthful about the way it plays out in the film. I know that you'd spoken about, or speak about it in your filmmaker's notes, in your director's statement. You'd mentioned that a lot of this was built, or some of it at least, was built on your own experience with childhood trauma, or intra-family trauma. I'm sorry, and also with your relationship as a mother, as a daughter. I mean, I don't want to push too far with that, but I mean, if there's a little bit that you can go into, it would be fantastic.
Sure. I mean, as the setting was very much from my childhood, I guess there's definitely sort of elements that leak in. That there was, I did pick up as a child on a bereavement in my mother's family. There was a photo on a picture on the wall of a beautiful little girl with blonde curls, and I realized that was someone who had died before my mother had been born. So I guess that always stayed with me, because she looks so angelic, and I think there's a real difficulty of living up to something like that, a loss like that, you know. And I kind of, as an adult, I kind of realized that that was quite hard for my mother, I think. So, but also, I mean, the genre of horror, I think, is so interesting, because, you know, people say, oh, I don't like horror, but for me, I think it's so important, because you exorcise all those deepest fears that you have. And I think horror can address all those terrible, terrible fears about the human condition and things we all share, you know, all these traumas and pain and fears. It's such a great way of putting them all out there and putting them under a microscope and letting them loom big, you know, and magnify them so that they're out there and you're examining them. And I think, obviously, the film has themes about my fears as a mother, as well as a child. And that's, I think, everything I can say from a personal level. But the story itself obviously isn't autobiographical, but there's elements of the relationships that have moments of
the emotional foundation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. Something that really, really just broke me down so hard on the film, the closing shot is so powerful. The idea, I mean, just Leah seeing her mother with the other girl as she's about to leave, as she's about to move on, and there's a sense of when you've accepted and articulated a certain kind of trauma, and you're in the space of that trauma and you're moving on from it and leaving, there's a sense of abandoning a memory, and how that in a strange way could almost feel like doing a disservice to it, if that's the right way to put it. But some of that last shot and the way Leah says, Mom, you know, as she's just about to leave that place for good, something about that just resonated so powerfully to me. I think more of a statement than a question.
Yeah, it is a bit, I'm not sure how to respond. Although I think that it's interesting how that resonates with you, because I wonder, or I hope, if it resonates differently for different people, because I hope perhaps that ending offers a possibility of two truths, you know, two ideas, that she's leaving forever and that's behind her, or it's a new beginning of sorts. And so I hope that it leaves you with a possibility of whatever you want it to be, or what makes sense for your own life. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. And it is, I mean, it's a bittersweet happy ending to me. I mean, because certainly she is moving on. She's getting away from the physical space that represents so much bad energy for her and so many memories. And the mother's in a happier place now. I mean, because the mother's found comfort. She's with the other daughter. I mean, so there's that. It's just a beautiful ending. It's the most perfect ending for this kind of a film, I feel.
It's interesting you say that, because there have been some people who've seen it who've read it completely differently, that end. So it's interesting that that's how you've read it. Yeah, I think it just, I totally agree with your reading of it. I just think it's interesting to see how people respond to it differently. And
yeah, well, these kinds of films become Rorschach patterns, I think, when they're really emotional and experiential.
Yes.
And when they don't spoon feed narratives. I feel that certainly, I mean, people bring their own filters to them and they resonate in the most profound ways when they're done well. I mean,
that's
like Martyr's Lane is just so, uncommonly powerful.
Oh, thank you. But that's a great analogy. I think it is. It's like a Jungian kind of, evocation of deep subconscious kind of symbolic stuff, collective trauma, but a very personal trauma all the same. And yeah, I guess that's why hopefully it resonates with people, because you can, like you say, it's a Rorschach test, and you can, you can inhabit it with your own emotions, and I'm glad that worked for you.
Cheers. So on that note, I suppose we should open it up to some questions from the audience. So if you are here and you have any questions for us, you can type them into the Q&A field. And there are no open questions. I'm presuming it's the kind of film that, does need time to gestate. Sure. Certainly, it was one that I've been going through the screening process. There's a period where we're watching 3 films a day, and we'll take breaks and we'll do different things. But after Martyr's Lane, I mean, I love the movie. I wrote to invite it immediately, and I stopped. I didn't want to watch anything after that. I didn't want to have a palate cleanse. I just sort of wanted to let it echo through me. And I imagine that people are probably not quite. Oh, I see there now is a question. But I imagine in many venues, when you're showing this in physical cinema soon, hopefully there'll be that situation where they'll have a packed room, but no questions, because they're just going to be, just stunned and overwhelmed. So a question from Eli: I loved how the camera followed the perspective of the young girl. Can you talk about how you set up the look of the film? Yeah, the art direction is gorgeous, as well as the visual construction. Very good question.
Yeah, that is a good question. So we were trying to work with that sense of scale and that child's eye view on the world. So we did try and keep the camera at child level, especially at the beginning. And then all those little, these little things that she finds and little details, trying to create this kind of macro vision, because it's the child's eye view again of small things that she collects around her, whereas the adult world is very much out of her reach. And so most of the adult stuff happens either through doorways or overheard through in another room or at a distance or out of reach. And we tried to create that palette, with the visual look of the film. And we tried a little bit also to create more handheld stuff in the daytime, in that busy daytime world, and then more of a sort of smooth, stylized look upstairs at night. When the nightmares creep in. So those were the kind of aspects we were trying to create. Yeah, so that was the look. And then the art direction was fantastic. Again, that probably did come a little bit from my own childhood, the idea of having this house that was a home, but not quite a home. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't, you don't own it. You're kind of slightly transitory moving through it.
But all these people are coming in and out of it that have no connection to living. Yeah.
And you're there for like 10, 15 years, and then you move. It's not your family home. It comes with a job. It's an open house for everybody else who needs it. So you have people staying with you, stuff like that. And but Leah tries to like get things like broken toys and jumble cell things and gather them in her room. These objects are very important to her, because they're symbolizing an inadequacy elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And so creating that design with the production designer and the art department and the costume designer was really great. I think they did a really good job of it's not too kind of horror house creepy, but it's not a homely, lovely home either, and it's slightly timeless. So yeah, I think it looks fantastic.
It really does. And also aesthetically, there's this great recurring use of reflective surfaces that I liked a lot in the film.
And that goes back to the theme of you know, it was like I'd gone through a mirror where she was gone and you were here, and it's playing with that idea that they're sort of mirror images of each other, but not these two little girls, and they both want something that the other has.
Beautiful. So Tanya mentions, so just to be clear, the mom is dead at the end, right? I mean, yeah. Or maybe not. Wait, I would think, to me, she seems decisively dead. But, I like the ending, but sorry?
I know it, but there are other people who've read it differently.
But okay, I mean, it seems, unless, how many floors up were they?
Yes. Well, but yeah,
maybe not far. Okay, no, it's very.
No, but maybe no. Yeah. Well, unless it was another part of the dream state.
Yeah, fair enough. Or the mother fell through the window and landed on one of the many animals that was around.
The big white rabbit cushioned her fall.
Great rabbit, by the way. Great. I mean, I love the fact that you have so many animals in the film. I mean, it's nice to see. Everyone, people will always say the cliche is never work with children or animals, and you have multiples of both.
It's part of childhood universe again, that interest in animals. And
absolutely. Yeah. So she said, yeah, I like the name, but read it differently for me. It's quite sad since the mom decided to choose the dead daughter and not the living one. Certainly. And yes, the art direction is gorgeous. Another person jumped in to say, AC wrote, not a question, but I loved it. Very moving and beautiful.
Thank you.
And it is. Were there any other questions? Okay. Well, Ruth, thank you very much. I know it's super late for you out there now.
No, it's good. It's great. Thank you, Mitch. It's really great to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you too. After years of knowing each other through email.
Yeah,
it's fantastic to finally have a face-to-face. Next time it will be in Montreal. I promise you. We'll get you here somehow with a film.
To Montreal, I would love to.
Have you not ever?
Never.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so that's bucket list stuff for sure then.
Definitely. I would love to.
Cool.
Thank you.
So best of luck with Martyrs Lane. It goes it plays tomorrow night, right? In Edinburgh?
Right. Yes.
Fantastic.
I'm going up. Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be good. I really want to see it with a big room of people. I can just imagine they'll be transfixed. I mean, with the lights, just to see the faces when the lights come up. I just imagine people slowly walking out, sitting in their chairs for a moment when the lights come up before even being able to move, and then slowly walking out. Minimal conversation, just
I'll be prepared.
Devastated, kind of transfixed, mulling it all over state. But yeah, it's such a gorgeous film. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Oh, thank you, Mitch.
And best of luck with it out in the world. I think it's going to find a lot of love.
I'm really proud to have it at Fantasia. Thank you.
Cheers. All right. Be well.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.